and welcome everybody to the second episode of Before the Parting Shot Lands. The first episode had such critical acclaim. We had a flood of emails coming in being like, who needs James Lynch? He's a busybody. He's too uptight. Where's that crazy American? Let's get him back on the air. So, due to the popular demand, we called around the world. We petitioned the Taiwanese government, and we got the man himself, Carlin Bardsley. How you doing, brother?
Hey, they haven't kicked me out yet, so I must be doing something right. And yeah, like anything that was even moderately successful the first time, it gets a sequel. So here we are, Before the Parting Shot Lands, Volume 2. I'm sure it's going to be just as weird as the last one. And there's a lot of weirdness to talk about coming out of UFC 204. So are the men for the job, Andrew Lawrence?
Yeah, if there's anyone well-equipped to talk about how bizarre this card was, we're definitely up for the job. Special shout-out to the Chinese box office and viewership. Without your extra support, we would have never got the sequel made. So, we'll...
Well, that's the funny thing about the Chinese government is they only allow certain American films to be shown on Chinese screens if they have a Chinese protagonist character. And I guess because of Taiwan, there's a little bit of a rift between China and Taiwan, but I fall under that line of close enough. So there you go. We've got our, in Canada we call it CanCon. I guess we call it ChinCon here. I don't know.
Perfect. You are the Taiwanese box office star that China deserves.
Yes, not the one it needs, but the one it deserves.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about what's really happened, because God damn it if Dan Henderson didn't win this fight against Michael Bisping. Am I absolutely correct in saying that Dan Henderson got robbed in his final appearance? MMA legend Dan Henderson goes to England, wins the middleweight title, and is completely robbed by the British. They couldn't let us have our moment in the sun, just like they couldn't let us have the 13 colonies, so we had to go revolutionary on their ass. What do you think, Carlin?
I think there's Americans tonight, probably in Boston Harbor, getting up on their boats and dumping a bunch of tea in the ocean. It was a very close fight, though, Andrew Lawrence. 1 and 2, I did like for Hendo because of the knockdowns. 1 was a clear one. 2, a little bit iffier because Bisping did control the majority of that round before he got tagged, but he also drilled Hendo in the pills, which led to a flurry as well. So, I'm big on context. You got to look at that. 3 and 4, clearly in the bank for the Brit. I don't think there's any argument there. Round 5, we had Michael Bisping doing Michael Bisping things. He really had his flow going. And then Henderson, for the first time in, 10 years, maybe more than that, remembers, oh my God, I can wrestle. Gets a nice little knee hook in there, trips him down, is able to control posture for the better part of a minute and a half. Can you argue a Dan Henderson victory in this fight? Of course you can. Can you argue a Michael Bisping robbery? No, you cannot. Robbery is the most overused term in this sport. I reserve it solely for Diego Sanchez fights. That's where the word robbery comes in. This was not a robbery. This was a very close fight. Would have been great to see the all-time legend Dan Henderson walk away with his arms in the air, holding the gold above his head. Of course it would. But sometimes you got to do a little bit more than hope for.
Yeah, I can see that argument, but my counterpoint is Dan Hendo is legend. You could definitely score. You could definitely score the 5th round to him. I think that there's even an argument that he might have got the better of the 4th round. But I'm seeing this.
No argument there.
I'm seeing this through red, white, and blue shades, baby.
Yeah.
So anyway,
beer goggles is what's happening right now.
Let me ask you this: the scorecard that got turned in, that was the 49-46. Complete English bullshit.
Yeah, that was a bit of a homer card. Again, it comes down to how you looked at round number 2, though, because Bisping was controlling the majority of that round. Henderson landed 1 strike of consequence. It happened to put Michael Bisping on his ass, but it was still just 1 strike of consequence. It depends how heavy you score knockdowns in MMA. I wasn't a big fan of scoring knockdowns heavier in the Conor McGregor-Nate Diaz rematch because it was clear Nate Diaz was working on 1 good pin. So that the knockdowns, and they didn't lead to almost finishes, so that I didn't really score them that heavily. And in this fight here, it was clear Hendo almost finished Bisping, was within a breath of finishing Michael Bisping in that first round. round again, put him on his ass. But was Bisping really in danger of being finished? It was, not nearly as close as the first round. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Let's shift gears a little bit and stop talking about this, particular fight and whether or not it was a robbery. I think no matter what, this fight speaks to the legacy of Dan Henderson fantastically. Just that first round alone, if he hadn't had any other moments of success the entire fight, if he didn't make the whole 5 rounds, I think that this is a perfect kind of cherry on top for him to walk away with. I mean, you'd love to see him get the decision, but that seems like, as much as I was pushing for it earlier, and I think that you could have made that scorecard, I can, of course, see the argument that there's a Michael Bisping victory here. You would love to see Dan Henderson walk away with it, but just for the pure spectacle of a Dan Henderson fight and what Dan Henderson represents as a fighter, he quintessentially brought that to the table despite being 59 years old or however old he is right now.
Yeah, I think he's 104. We're going to have to chop him down and count the rings at this point to see how old Dan Henderson is. But, it's been fascinating watching the evolution of Dan Henderson as a fighter through all this. He starts as a wrestler, all of a sudden discovers he's got this right hand that is absolute kryptonite to anyone it touches, becomes right hand happy, and throughout to the end of his career, all of a sudden he turns into a counterpuncher, realizes he doesn't have as much wind in his sails as he did as a younger man. So leaning back on it, trying to find a home for that counter H-bomb the entire time. He knew during this fight it was going to take one. So it didn't matter how heavy he was breathing, he was going to go through this. He knew what he had to do. He knew he had a clear path to victory, and he wanted to follow that path. Maybe pressured a little bit more, like Brian Stan suggested, it would have created more openings for that right hand. But Bisping was a very smart fighter as well. Whenever he felt the pressure, he was able to spin around, get Hendos back to the fence, and give Bisping the real estate he needed to keep it at range. This fight, it almost reminded me of Michael Bisping against Ross Poynton from the Ultimate Fighter, just in the sole way that. Yeah, just the sole way that Henderson's feet a lot of the time looked like he was in quicksand. He was glued to a specific spot, wanted to land one punch and one punch only.
Yeah, and that's been the story of Dan Henderson's game plan for the last actually every fight since maybe the Shogun, not the rematch, but the original Shogun fight that earned him the title shot against John Jones that never happened. I don't think we've seen a mobile. I don't think we've ever maybe seen a mobile Dan Henderson, but you know what I mean. Like, he still had some youthfulness in his step back in those days. Ever since then, it's kind of been this plod and the shuffle. It's almost become a cliche, shuffle, shuffle, H-bomb. But that's kind of how his style became, this rocking back and forth, just, finding those couple inches to get inside on someone, and kind of slip in there so that people thought they were safe and were out of the range of being countered, but they weren't, because he'd slowly taken these mini half steps in and shortened that distance. As much as this was a quintessential Dan Henderson fight, it was a quintessential Michael Bisping fight too. Rocked early, over exuberance and overconfidence, kind of getting him into a really bad spot. And God, in that first exchange, if as soon as you dropped him and he flew through the air to land that elbow, you just, at least I did, instantly thought oh God, it's over. The MMA gods just laugh at us. But it wasn't meant to be, and that's great, because I think, in some weird way, this fight ended up being, kind of a swan song for both of these fighters. I know that, Michael Bisping will go on to defend the belt and probably lose if he fights any of the top 4 guys. But this is a fantastic fight to show exactly what he's brought to the table, especially in his later part of his career. Dan Henderson, you mentioned his evolution through time. Out of all these great fights we've seen, Dan Henderson's a person who won the UFC 17 tournament, for Christ's sake. He has a very long career. He is the oldest of the old school. We had a lot of different errors, and we've seen a lot of different great moments. What would you pick as a moment in time where you're like, this is Dan Henderson, for people who will never see Dan Henderson fight?
All right, so we covered a lot there, but I think we boil it down to 3 points. First, on Hendo's posture, you were the one who mentioned it to me earlier. He kind of looked like the guy from the Munsters. So I went back and I watched some old Munsters reruns, and God damn, are you correct on that one, Andrew? Like, I was like, wow, I really noticed that. The other thing that jumped out at me is that Dan Henderson at this point in his life looked like a 185-pound Tim Sylvia. In the kind of the herky-jerky motion, you know, he's got that right hand, right shoulder up a little bit too high, kind of the plodding steps. A friend of mine coined the term lumbering for Tim Sylvia's posture. It's a little bit of lumbering, and he's always just kind of looming, waiting to throw that right hand. I think it works perfectly for Dan Henderson. As far as Michael Bisping goes, yes, quintessential Michael Bisping performance. He's almost kind of like Forrest Griffin in the way that he's got to get rocked a bit at first, and oh yeah, I'm in a probably do something now, right? And one of those guys that really doesn't mind the taste of his own blood. As far as the rest of the heavyweight or middleweight division is rather, holy smokes! A great post-fight interview by Bisping to just pull everybody's punk card. That was highly amusing for me. But if I'm one of the top middleweight contenders right now, I am salivating. I guarantee you, Chris Weidman licking his lips right now. I guarantee you, Jacare Souza warming up the crocodile dance right now. I guarantee you, Luke Rockhold's saying, this asshole beat me right now. And Yoel Romero is still probably blaming Gay Jesus. But the other three are going to fight Michael Bisping right now. And, you know, let's be real about this. As much as we all love Dan Henderson, as much as we appreciate how much he has done for this sport, Michael Bisping just went 25 minutes, the 46-year-old man, and arguably lost the fight and came out looking battered. Yeah. So if we're looking at the rest of the UFC middleweight division in their prime right now, I'm not sure I want to be left hook Larry at this point, because I still think Rock beats Bisping 4 times out of 5. Chris Weidman beating Bisping is a gimme in my opinion. Jacare could be an interesting fight, but I still would favor Jacare in that one. And I just think Yoel Romero's an idiot, so I'll never favor him against anybody good. But that's more of a personal thing. Where do we go? Okay, Henderson, as far as remembering
greatest moment.
Greatest moment. Let's pull up the record here, because you got the Shogun fights, obviously.
You'll miss an entire era of Dan Henderson's career sometimes when you're just casually thinking about it. I'll tell first, personally, I've been a fan of Pride because the Pride era always existed in some sort of mythical space.
Or even Rings, like think about Rings. He goes all the way back to that. It's crazy how long this guy's been around.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a man who fought in the tournament era. You can watch on UFC Fight Pass right now documentaries about it, speaking about it as if it was a barbaric time. No, the guy who just fought for the middleweight championship fought in a tournament. It's it's kind of crazy when you put it in that kind of perspective. To touch back on your point about Michael Bisping just blowing up the top 4. How much better could you have set yourself up for a money fight? Don't preclude yourself to any one of the 4. Let them make the statement, let them make the buzz that allows them to become the contender. Because you really have no clue what's happening with those top 4. But you're absolutely right. You can't have a performance against a 46-year-old man like Michael Bisping just did and not just have question marks all around his ability to compete against the elite of the elite. Dan Henderson, like I said, I'm a fan of the Pride era. I love that. I just love the zeitgeist of fighting at that time. So I think the Wanderlei Silva fight is probably going to be my number 1 there, just because it was such a wild moment, and Pride was special in the way that they hype fights. They made things very weird, and you know me, I'm always going to go in for the weird.
Yeah. The late Pride, where people were starting to count out Dan Henderson at that point. Then all of a sudden, a win over Vitor Belfort, a win over Wanderlei Silva, and you're like, this is the resurrection of Dan Henderson, those many years ago. And then, of course, he comes into the UFC hot, gets a shot against Rampage, gets a shot against Anderson Silva, comes up short, but, Rampage at the time was the best in the world. Anderson Silva is, will always be one of the best in the world. We just saw him come off the couch on 2 days' notice and go 15 minutes with the light heavyweight champion of the world. So yeah, there's just so much greatness in Dan Henderson's career. He's one of those guys that when you try to encapsulate his career into a single fight or a single moment, you're really cheating yourself, because there's just so much goodness there to sift through.
Yeah, if it's interesting about that. Wanderlei Silva, right? When he KOs him to win, I guess they were calling it the middleweight championship of Pride, right?
Yeah,
He'll have
205, but yeah, they called it
Yeah,
middleweight.
whatever. You know what? Yeah, it was a lightweight or light heavyweight rather. Wanderlei Silva, he'll fight 20 more times after that. He'll have another 20 fights. At that point, people were calling into question whether or not Dan Henderson was done, and he would go on to beat Shogun Hua. Go on to beat Fedor Emelianenko.
Yeah, that's
Just
another one we haven't even talked about.
just do legendary things. We call Jake Shields like the sneaky goat because he snuck in that win over him in that Strikeforce card that no one watched. But Dan Henderson, if you just skim by the wins, you'll see that has a victory over every major name during like 3 or 4 different time periods of the sport, and that's just a fantastic accomplishment. Another thing that enthralls me about Dan Henderson and in the celebrity around Dan Henderson is that this is a guy with 15 losses. In boxing, that could never ever happen. That anyone would be a star or a legend or someone that's a clear Hall of Famer that's lost nearly a third of their fights.
Yeah, something that we talked with Randy Couture as well, but that also speaks to the relative, the newness of the sport, really, where these guys are still kind of developing their skill set in a lot of ways. Randy Couture getting tapped early in his career by Valentino Overeem, is that really going to be held against him when you look at his career as depth and as breadth as it is? I don't think so. And Dan Henderson is the exact same way. But it also speaks to the matchmaking of MMA as well, where they're not afraid to throw 2 guys in there. And you know what? If you look good in a loss, it's not necessarily going to be held against you the way it is in boxing, where you can lose a really close decision to an excellent fighter and just be shuffled from the top of the heap down to the bottom of the heap again. And I think that's a good thing for our sport.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about Dan Henderson as a representative of the old school too, all the way today in the new school, the modern age of MMA, and I think his record speaks to it. One more fight that I want to mention: when Strikeforce, after he lost that fight to Jake Shields, he fought Babalu in St. Louis, Missouri, and knocked him out cold. In a return to light heavyweight, and I remember watching that fight and going, this will be good for him. They'll feed him a bunch of cans and Strikeforce, and that'll be it. And that's what the career of Dan Henderson will be. Salute, take some paychecks on your way out, good man. And just think we had so many great moments from him afterwards. There's really nothing you could say about Dan Henderson that probably hasn't already been said. I think
he did leave us. He did leave us with the touchstone. He said, "I wish fights were scored by how the other guy's face looked." So Dan Henderson favors Stockton rules. Athletic commissions, listen to him.
Yes, bow down to Dan Henderson. He knows more about fighting than any human alive. Like I said, a real fun, great way, to send off that career. I think we've already kind of touched on the future of Bisping, and we can kind of move along now into the co-main event. Gegard Mousasi, kind of waxing Vitor Belfort, finishing him off in the second round, 2 minutes and 43 seconds, TKO, I guess, if you want to call it a TKO. He ate about 900 unanswered shots to the head. Have we finally put Vitor Belfort to rest here? Do you think that this guy's ready to retire? I buried him a long time ago, but ever since the TRT Belfort went away, I've put him in a place. But Vitor Belfort, do you think he hangs it up now? Do you think this was enough damage for him to take?
Yes, absolutely. I think Vitor's done. Like you say, he's been not the same guy ever since, that they kind of let the air out of him. This guy, this guy's balls are deflated more than Tom Brady's on a good day. You know what I mean? I don't see anything that Vitor can really bring to the sport now. When he unleashed that initial flurry against Mousasi just kind of looked at him and gave him the no. I think Vitor knew then he was screwed. And from then, Mousasi he took his time, found his range, and just was able to snake him down to the ground, and that was it. I mean, Vitor, who is known for looking superhuman with chemical assistance, he looked very, very ordinary tonight. He looked like Clark Kent as Superman has left the building.
Yeah, definitely. We had two very dad bod physiques in the main and co-main event of this fight. Let's talk about the refereeing for a second. Because Yves Lavigne in the main event, we didn't mention it and we didn't touch on it, but what a fucking mess that guy is. How is he still refereeing professional fights? Is there no oversight? We don't even have to ask that question because we know there is no oversight in refereeing, and athletic commissions basically twiddle their thumbs and cash checks. So, they couldn't find their elbow from their asshole, basically.
Yeah. Especially in like England, when there's no real proper commission. The UFC just comes in and says, "Hey, these are our guys. Sign off on them." Okay.
Yeah.
That's the beginning and the end of the entire process. Yves Lavigne in that main event, holy shnikes. Dan Henderson gets drilled in the pills. He has the right. It is written. It is enshrined in the rule book. He has 5 minutes to recover. All right. So I think when Yves Lavigne read that rule, he saw the number 5 and he thought, I have to ask him to fight every 5 seconds. Hey, are you ready yet, Dan? Dan, take all the time you need, but are you ready? Are you ready, Dan? Dan, are you ready? Can you hear me, Dan? Dan, would you like to fight now? Shut the fuck up and give the man his time. And Michael Bisping, a nice classy move on this guy's part too, kicks the guy in the balls and then is making the gestures to the crowd like, oh, he's milking it. Oh, he's milking it. Well, if you hadn't kicked him the balls for the second time in the fight, and yes, I am making this gesture, as a shout out to our British fans here, if you don't drill him in the pills twice, maybe he doesn't need to take that extra time. So, no, if I'm Dan Henderson, I would have just told Yves Lavigne to shut the fuck up and let me know when my 5 minutes are up.
Absolutely, and that would have been a quintessential American moment too. There's nothing that screams the American spirit more than being like, "Shut the fuck up, you British asshole! I'm gonna take advantage of this rule to its maximum benefit."
Even worse, Yves Lavigne's French Canadian.
Oh, is he? Oh, then he would have apologized after he got told to shut the fuck up. He's like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right."
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. I've been being an asshole this whole time. That's my fault, Dan.
Où est ma poutine?
So, he just appalling refereeing. I mentioned it in this fight too, in the co-main event, which is the fight we moved on to. Whoever was, I think it was Mark Goddard was in the second fight. Who was the co-main event?
I think Goddard, or was it Leon Roberts?
It doesn't matter. Whoever was it, I'll look it up while I'm talking about it. But he literally was asking Vitor Belfort. I thought he said at some point, have you had enough? And it's like, yeah, he's taken 900 unanswered blows to the head. He went from 3 different positions.
Vitor opens his mouth to try and answer, gets an elbow in it, okay, stop the fight.
Yeah, as soon as he was trying to verbally tap, he was getting just clowned. And here's my thing. He went through 4 different distinct positions on the ground, all being in the inferior position, all getting ground and pound, rained on him. But it only seemed in that last position where he's like, oh, these blows look significant. It's like, no, the last 30 blows have been very significant as well, good sir.
Yeah, Vitor Belfort looked like a tackling dummy for that last minute or so of that fight. You could have stopped it at any point and no one would have complained. But I guess the referee thought that the UK crowd paid for blood and he was determined to give it to him.
If you're, okay, snort a line of cocaine and put on your MMA tinfoil hat.
I knew this was going to turn back to cocaine somehow.
because I need you thinking real left brain right here.
All right.
If the UFC, has got the earpiece on the refs here, you think Dana White's getting the call in there and being like, let him take a little bit more punishment? We've seen it a couple times with aging fighters who we kind of want to shoo out the door. Those later fights, sometimes they take a lot of brutal ground and pound, a little couple extra late shots, maybe a little weight. I'm saying, I noticed you haven't done your line yet, but just think with me on this. Think with me, good. Could you see, the argument that, maybe Dana's in the air, telling him, hey, let him take a couple extra on his way out. Maybe that'll encourage him to not renew that last fight. What do you think?
No, I can't. up for that conspiracy theory.
Listen, James Lynch is not listening. You can wildly speculate with me on this.
I do think the referees get it in their head, though, that like, okay, this is Vitor Belfort in here, you know. I don't want to be the guy that calls his career off, you know, one or two shots, you know. It's Vitor, let him fight his way out of it. I do think that enters the referee's brain, but I don't think that Dana White hardwired to the referee's ear saying, cheer him.
All I'm saying is Mark Goddard looks like a dude who could use an extra $500 on the side.
Couldn't we all?
You really can't blame the man when you put it in that part. Gegard Mousasi.
Fine, give me $500. I'll let Vitor. All right, you made your point.
I'll let Vitor take 10,000 unanswered shots for $500. I got no loyalty to him. Gegard Mousasi looking really good in this fight. Always looks like he's supposed to be a 185-pound contender. Never ends up kind of being one. Do you think he has the push this time? Do you see an avenue, a couple matchups that can get him into the title shot?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of in a weird spot because all the top guys have dance partners right now. So,
yep.
But Mousasi looks better than he ever has, in my opinion. He's found his rhythm. I think this is his time to make a run, really. I don't know what you really do with him, though. I mean, he mentioned Anderson Silva. If Anderson Silva GSP fight for Toronto doesn't come to fruition, that is a fight you can make. I guess you keep your eye on what happens with Derek Brunson and Robert Whittaker. There's, right now everyone's just kind of got dance partners. Everyone's all full up. But if I'm Gegard Mousasi, I'm very happy in my performance. If I'm the UFC, I'm very happy in Gegard Mousasi's performance. He's got the big name on his resume. He's got the highlight finish. This is a guy that you can put your marketing resources behind now, even with the Kermit the Frog post-fight interviews. Even with that, I think the awkwardness is part of his charm at this point, to be honest. So, yeah, he is one of those guys that, depending on how the whole little de facto tournament that they're doing shakes out, you can easily put him against any one of those guys, and it's a marquee matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually circling the winner of that Robert Whittaker matchup, especially if Robert Whittaker wins. I think that's a fantastic matchup. I don't think that's happened between them. I think their styles match up really well, and it's an interesting fight. And it is a holdover fight. I think that you can keep Mousasi back and kind of filter him in case we got an injury anywhere in that tournament, or you can match him up, with the winner of that fight if everything pans out, and build a contender, because even a win for, I think for Whittaker, a win over Mousasi is a huge name for him, and a massive accomplishment, and kind of a way that you can springboard him into a number one contender shot. And, middleweight's as healthy as it could be, but despite the bizarreness, happening in the title picture right now.
Yeah, middleweight's a very interesting division right now. I guess we're just playing the waiting game at this point. We've got Left Hook Larry at the top heap, but for how long? If I'm Michael Bisping, I take a nice long vacation. I take a lot of pictures of myself with the belt so I can show them to my grandkids, and I'm prepared to be annihilated in my next fight out. But then again, I've been counting out Michael Bisping since the Tim Kennedy fight, and he's shut my mouth supremely a few times now, most notably winning the title from Luke Rockhold. But I don't think his reign will be a long and dominant one. Gegard Mousasi is a guy on the outside looking in right now, but that won't last long.
Yeah, it would be a dream of mine if Tim Kennedy became the 185-pound champion of the world. There would be no more obnoxious place on Twitter than Tim Kennedy's page if he becomes champion of the world.
I know, it'd be like, fuck you, Dana, fuck you, Bisping, fuck you, Iraq, fuck you, Putin, He would go far and wide with his list of fuck yous there. It wouldn't be just relegated to combat sports. He
would literally go to war naked with just guns and the UFC belt strapped around his waist.
I don't even think he'd bring guns. It would just be him naked with the belt strapped around his bits, and he'd be like, "That's it, America!"
Just using it as a weapon. He's just whipping it in terrorist's face.
Holding above his head like a mace.
It becomes like a Captain America, he gets the reflection of the desert sun off the belt and blinds terrorists, and then he's like, "Attack! Their snipers are impaired."
fact, you know, he wouldn't even be naked. He would be dressed like Katy Perry, like in that that stand-up video he did.
Absolutely. He's got to live with that the rest of his life. Did he know that when he made that video? Like,
Oh
he
yeah,
has
I
it.
think he's loved.
There's 2 people watching this show who have that video downloaded on their hard drive. They are willing to share it at a heartbeat.
Oh, they should be. That is a classic piece of Tim Kennedy's career. How do you not love a guy that takes, you know, gives 0 fucks, takes himself so not seriously, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna redo a Katy Perry video shot for shot. Watch me.
Yeah, did it. There was a disturbing lack of guns in that video, though. As a card-carrying member of the NRA, you know, my one criticism was more guns next time, Tim.
Are you really in the NRA?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
That'd be so deep, right?
I know. I was like, all of a sudden, that kind of flipped the script on me. We're like, wait a second.
You're like, I don't like this guy as much anymore. You're in the NRA, dude. I don't even own a gun.
Yeah, I'm not in the NRA. I don't even own a gun, registered or otherwise.
Listeners, that should just prove to you I will lie to you at any point.
Yeah, he lied to his co-host. In fact, I'm disappointed he didn't go all in with that one. To be honest with you,
yeah, I should have played with it.
I did it to make Chuck Heston 5 years ago.
I just like pull a ripcord behind me and like, you know, 2 Confederate flags drop as my background.
Machine gun on either shoulder. Let's do this. Blade of straw jutting out from the mouth.
2 women in like you know,
Star and Stripes
80s bikinis. Yeah, come and hand me bazookas. That'd be awesome.
And a case of Budweiser.
If only I could live in that universe.
Someday, Trump's gonna make America great again. Just you wait.
Yeah. Come this, come next year, we will be living in that universe. Let's circle around those.
Taiwan #1.
Oh, you're killing me, Bardsley. All right. Let's talk about Jimmy Manuwa beating OSP. Fantastic performance by him. Struggles in the first round, but really catches his rhythm. Jimmy Manuwa has been a guy who has, seemed to constantly disappoint, but if you end up looking at his record, he only has 2 losses in spots where you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense that he would lose those fights. So I don't know why I consider him a constant disappointment, but that's basically where he's lumped into in my mind. The underdog against OSP, I think, and OSP comes out there, institutes a little bit of wrestling, and you think, yep, that's all she wrote for Mr. Manuwa. But in the second round, he's a little tired, taps him up. What do you think with Jimmy? Is it possible that we get anywhere with the Jimmy Manuwa train, or will he be forever England's best 205er?
I think Jimmy Manuwa has a higher ceiling than people think. I picked Jimmy Manuwa in this fight. I thought that OSP was going to overcommit on some of those wide looping strikes or some of those weird kicks, and give Jimmy Manuwa the space to move in a little bit more, throw some nice tight counter hooks, and really do some damage on OSP. And then the first round happened. I'm watching this thing going, what the fuck is he thinking? I mean, there's a clear path to victory for Jimmy Manuwa in this fight. In the first round, he just absolutely refused to follow it. So he decided he wanted to be a wrestler. Never a good idea if you're an English guy to decide to become a wrestler. So he went down in the books with round 1. I think maybe his corner, just slapped him around and said, who do you think you are? And he came out of the second round, did exactly what he needed to do. And every time he hit OSP, he made a dent. Did a lot of good work with the body shots as well. And you could tell OSP was starting to wobble. Jimmy Manuwa was patient because he said that his corner told him that when OSP's wobbling, don't overcommit. That's when he can hit you with something. So Manuwa timed his shot perfectly, put OSP out, and jaw from Jimmy Manuwa there. I think that getting starched by Alexander Gustafsson is not a bad thing. Alexander Gustafsson, is number 3 in the division in my opinion. So you can do a lot of things with Jimmy Manuwa right now, depending on how long John Bones Jones is out. That's a potential matchup. I think Jimmy Manuwa has the ability, rather, to beat a lot of the guys at 205 right now. He's not going to beat your tippity top guys. Even in a fight with John Jones, everyone's saying, oh, I want to see Jones and Rumble. I want to see Jones and Rumble. A fight against Jimmy Manuwa is not that far off. Jimmy Manuwa and Rumble are very similar in the fact that they're power strikers and they can turn the guy's lights out with one shot. Rumble's just got longer arms and more domestic violence on his record.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. I think you nailed it in the first round there. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Nailed it like Rumble Johnson punching his ex-girlfriend.
I'm like the segue on this. Jesus Christ, brother. Yeah, I think you nailed it with the first round. You know, Jimmy Manuwa instigated the clinch there, and it's a thing you do in striking, right? You see it in boxing all the time. You have a failed little exchange, and you end up very close to each other in the box, and you don't want to get hit at close range. You tie a guy up, but in MMA, you have the option of kind of getting that quick second arrest and then pushing a guy off you. You know, maintaining your distance and staying striking. Because you'll easily get turned against the cage, especially against a guy who wants to cage fight with you, like OSP clearly did and thought he had an advantage, and I thought he was clearly winning the fight when it was against the cage. And then when you decided to stop doing that, holy shit, did your rhythm catch up, you know? And he found the timing of his strikes very quickly. I think losing that first round was a wake-up call to him, and it actually helped him fall into a rhythm, if that makes any sense. And Jimmy Manuwa. Yeah, you might want to just fall into the rhythm without losing the first round. That would be a skill to get, you know, if you're going to be a 3-round MMA fighter. But, you know, Jimmy Manuwa, he does have a higher threshold, but one thing that's a constant is, you know, he makes bad decisions in fights, especially when the heat's on. And you saw it in these ground exchanges. There was little simple mistakes that he made that could have just been mitigated or minimalized, but he then compounded them by making worse mistakes. Like he was up against the cage, or no, there was that exchange where he came in and he was threatening with a choke. OSP has him by the neck, and through like 2 or 3 bad decisions, all of a sudden it ends up that OSP nearly has his back, and he would have been in a whole world of trouble and possibly, you know, have been finished in that position. He was able to get out of it probably because OSP's, you know, back-taking abilities aren't all that there, more than anything really great that Jimmy did on the ground. But those kind of series of mistakes I look at and see, okay, an elite fighter capitalizes here, here, and here. A real veteran, a real savvy ground guy capitalizes in all those situations, and you're finished. You're not going to get up back to your feet. You're going to be flattened out on your back, you know, and have some guy pounding on the sides of your head looking for a rear naked choke to sink in, and then it's night. So Jimmy Manuwa to me is a guy who's always going to have the potential to be a top 5 to top 8 guy just because of the shallowness of the 205 division, but has always lacked the well-roundedness to actually compete with the elite guys.
I agree. His fight has continued to be atrocious. He did train in Sweden with Gus for this fight, so if he continues that, you know, that's only going to continue to pay dividends for him. I think that could really round out his game a bit more and get him thinking, get him a little bit more intelligent in there. So he's doing the right things. Whether those will translate into success is something we're going to have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. But you gotta love this victory from Manuwa. You know, I realized I was very negative for him, so I want to give him his due props here. His, you know, his combinations and, you know, sliding his head off the center line to land body shots, really exquisite body work. You know, you hear Connor always talk about his body work, but this was a lot more subtle and there was a lot more setup behind it, and it seemed real natural. Didn't even think that he was like, okay, now I'm going to attack the body. He was in a real flow state in that second round where he was just seeing openings and taking every opportunity to score, and it was really something great. You know, to watch. It was a really entertaining fight, so my hat's off to Jimmy. Let's talk about Stefan Struve beating up this little midget dude, Daniel Lynch. I picked Stefan Struve to lose this fight because I'm picking Stefan Struve to lose all of his fights because I think that he's chinny. But, you know, he uses range well, and it seems like when he's in those positions where he actually sits behind his jab. I remember the Stipe Miocic fight particularly as a thing where it clicked halfway through the fight for him that he was like, sit behind my jab, this guy will never be able to touch me. And when he's able to do that, you're like, how is this guy, you know, not doing this to every fighter across the UFC? But he did it today against, you know, Lonchuk. And gets the submission victory in the second round. What did you think about Struve's performance here?
I love the pronunciation on omelet, whatever, you know, like it reminds me of, yeah, New York guy, it reminds me of a La 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 Fontaine
There you go.
back in the day. But this fight was just weird watching the two of them next to each other. It was like watching a giraffe fight a fire hydrant. It was just a very odd thing to look at. But Stephen Struve, like you said, sat behind the jab, sat behind the front kick. You know, he did get tagged a couple of times. You know, almost found his way in and landed some hooks. His chin stood up to him. So, you know, maybe all the extra muscle that Stephen Struve was finally packing on that lean giraffe body is working out for him. Stephen Struve fought the way Stephen Struve needed to fight to win this fight. I had Stephen Struve win this fight just because, you know, I'm not an omelet fan after about 10:30 in the morning. So, you know, I didn't see a path to victory for Omelanchuk. People are just like, oh, he's never been finished. And it's like, well, yeah, but he's fighting a guy that can hit him from like the 5th row. So, Stephen Struve, you know, he's coming back in the heavyweight division. Heavyweight is paper thin right now. So if Struve can build a little mini run for himself, you know, this time next year we could be talking about him as a possible title contender because that's just how thin the division is. Stephen Struve still has youth on his side. He still has room to get better. He still has room to learn. And most of the heavyweight division, you know, is 1 or 2 fights away from retiring anyway. So Stephen Struve, the process of elimination, still a guy to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. He might just outlast every other person who has the ability to fight in the heavyweight division and win the title by default.
Send me Schultz. I want my money back.
Definitely. I think, you know, you make a good point about him putting some weight on his frame. You know, he always kind of looked like a gaunt guy, even though he's a heavyweight and had, you know, some extra pounds to put on it. So, you know, maybe he's getting the right vitamins down in South Florida right now.
Was that a PED joke at the Black Zillion's expense? Would you do that, Andrew Lawrence?
Would I dare? Would I dare? Would I
dare? Dare for
I have dared. I've done it. I'm a daring man, Carlin.
I'm a daring man.
You know. So we got these prelims. What did you like on the prelims? Let's not talk about them all. But what did you like? What did you hate? Tip of the cap, wag of the finger. What do you got?
Oh, we got a Colbert reference. I love it. All right, well, I woke up somewhere around the Leon Edwards Albert Tumanov fight.
Nice.
Well, you know, I'm 12 hours Eastern time to Taiwan time, so you know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get up at 7 in the morning to watch fight pass prelims. I'm just not.
Nor should you be expected to, good man. You are a gentleman. You are not.
Exactly.
The UFC waits for you, good sir.
Exactly. You know, getting up early enough for Edwards and Tumanov was about as much of a sacrifice as I was going to make here. But Albert Tumanov, you know, continues to prove that the ground game is his kryptonite. Leon Edwards, primarily known as a striker, but, you know, he made Tumanov wear him like a blanket in round 1. You know, Tumanov had a round 2, but again, hit the mat again in round 3, and it was all Leon Edwards. How about Yuri Alcantara taking Brad Pickett? I had Pickett in this fight. Could not have been more wrong if I had an electrified wronging machine. Alcantara looked absolutely fantastic. Smokes Brad Pickett with an elbow, and then like chains together like 4 different submissions before the triangle finally sticks. Fantastic there. One finger for Davey Grant because Davey Grant, you know, looked fantastic for the first couple of rounds, and then, you know, I don't know if he got overconfident or what, but Stasiak got him on the ground, and that's all she wrote. So lack of ground defense. For both Davey Grant and Albert Tumanov in this one. So there's my wag of the finger. The fingers. 2 wags of the finger there, you know, I got to get work on my cardio for that one. And a big tip of the cap to Yuri Alcantara, who looked absolutely fan-freaking-tastic out there.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give the tip of the cap to one Mr. Platinum Mike Perry, complete MMA douchebag, but the guy was in an absolute brutal war, came out on top with a really late finish. The kid can thump, and he's a great fighter, actually. You know, you can say what you want. He's kind of a douche. You know, kind of has that, you know, clearly rolls in circles that are less savory than some of us might. But you can't deny the guy's skill, so tip of the cap with the performance. It was an absolute barn burner of a fight. Wag of the figure to Adriano Martinez, a guy who seemed to have dropped the ball with this one. I thought that this was you know, This is a guy who I thought had really great striking for that division. A guy who should have been showcasing that striking against Santos. Loses the split decision here, but seemed to clearly be fighting to his opponent's level instead of instituting his greatness. And at this point in his career, I was more than hoping to see it as a prospect. I was expecting to see it from him. So my wag of the finger goes to Mr. Martins.
The most interesting part, apparently it was a good fight I haven't seen yet, just from catching on Twitter. The most interesting part of Mike Perry's fight is that for the Fight Pass companion, his corner audio was turned off for this fight. So
well played, UFC.
Exactly. After the anti-Asian slurs last time, I wonder what they would have been saying about hot chocolate, Danny Roberts.
Jesus God, yeah. Well played, UFC. No one needs to know. What's best left unheard? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it.
Mike Perry is voting for Donald Trump. We know this.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You just hurt my heart. You can't mention the election in my presence, man. This is actually my country. I just got heart palpitations. I had a mini heart attack.
I am amazed that Mike Perry did not come to the octagon wearing a Great Again hat.
Oh my God, the whole world would have gone nuts. He probably actually would have gained fans, knowing typical MMA fans.
Do you think MMA fans would skew towards Trump? Seriously?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that the crowd on MMA Twitter, skews highly Hillary. But I bet you if you polled that live audience, you'd get a 65% Trump vote.
Bleed is voting Trump.
It's the only poll that actually gives Trump the lead is exiting the UFC events. All right, man. Let's. Okay, we're doing my show and your show, so we'll do something you do at the end of my show first, and then what we do at the end of your show next. Give it a letter grade. Oh no, first performance of the night for everybody. Who are you giving out? You're Joe Silva. You're throwing away 50 G's like it's nothing, like it's Daddy Dana's money. Give 50 G's out to a couple people here. I'll go first if you need to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give 50 G's to Platinum Mike Perry only because I think it's going to accelerate his personal downfall, which we all know is coming.
He'll get hooked on meth.
Oh, if it hasn't already happened, it's in the works.
Or bat faults.
And number two, I'm going to give 50 G's to Mr. Jimmy Manuwa, only because I've dumped on him so much in his past. And I love that finishing sequence. Some exquisite striking there. Real highlight reel stuff. 50 G's for the man.
Yeah, I'll give 50 to Jimmy as well. A lot of people were counting him out of this fight. I was not. A lot of people were, and he did exactly what he needed to do from the start of the second onward to win that fight. I'll also give 50 G's to Mirsad Bektic, just because this guy has been waiting for so long. Steamrolled Russell Doan, but he's been off for so long. 50 G's could probably make a dent in his bills too. So Mirsad Bektic, 145 is a great division as well right now, especially with a guy like Bektic on the come up as well. It's not just the guys at the top, like Max Holloway's and your Frankie Edgars. Mirsad Bektic is pulling up and really pulling away, not just as a prospect, but becoming a legit contender. Great job from Mirsad Bektic.
Yep. Fight of the night for you. I think for me, of course, it was the main event. Is there any disagreement there? Clearly, something that should go down as a fight people should watch, in the future. This is a fight you can turn back and be like, this is great MMA. These aren't great athletes, but it just shows a great spirit of the sport, It
was a spectacle as it was, a great fight, because you always had the X factor of, is Dan Henderson going to land that right hand again? This could literally stop at any moment. Is Bisping going to really up his volume and take the old man Henderson out? There's so much intrigue in this fight, and I think a lot of the times when people, the hardcores are looking just at technical brilliance, which is awesome, but the intrigue and the suspense is what keeps people coming back to this thing. And nothing would have been more 2016, not just in MMA, but just this has been a weird year, just globally. Nothing would have been more 2016 than Dan Henderson pulling off the upset, and it looked like it might have happened right up until the final buzzer. And what about Dan Henderson ending his MMA career with an attempted somersault kick? Who saw that coming? I mean, like, Hendo keeps us guessing right to the very end. Yeah, the definite fight of the night performance from both gentlemen.
What a great way to end a career. This is why MMA will forever be the greatest spectacle known to man. The legend, the stand-up king, the shuffle H-bomb. How does he go out in the last couple seconds? Somersault kick / heel hook attempt / what the fuck was that? It was...
Slash deep end of his pool.
Yeah, exactly. I've done more athletic things diving into a pool for sure, Carlin.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I think he just, figured, I've always wanted to try this. I'm never going to get another opportunity. Let's just see what happens.
Quintessential fuck it, baby. Let's roll the dice,
Yeah. Even Bisping kind of froze. Like, there's still like 2 seconds left in the fight. He didn't know what to do. He just froze and looked at him like, really? You just really tried to do that?
No mortal man can process when Dan Henderson unleashes the barrel roll.
Yeah, a barrel roll?
I don't know. Like, I'm not calling that an actual technique. There was no somersault kick attempted. It was, I don't know.
A barrel roll.
Like, I don't know. How would you roll? Jesus Christ, Bart. It's like 1:30 in the morning, man. You got to criticize me on barrel roll now? Thought we were friends.
Roll?
Okay. All right, dude. Let's put on the parting shot cap for a little bit. Oh, no, before we do that, a lot of news in MMA. Is there anything you care to mention?
Yeah, the UFC Manila canceled this week. The BJ Penn pulling out due to an injury.
Stay of execution for BJ Penn.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I don't want to see BJ Penn fight anymore. No. It's not going to be fun. But the story got out from Jeremy Botter at Flow Combat and others that the real reason that the event was canceled was not due to the fact that they had no main event. It was due to the fact that the Philippine, the new government there, Duterte, who is the strong man, he's killing drug addicts and drug dealers by the dozen down there, and I'm not even kidding when I say that. Apparently, Duterte, the new Duterte government wanted to drug test everybody that was coming into the country. That was the story that came out. Not just the fighters. We're talking production staff, everyone else. And conceivably, if you had popped even for weed, they could have rescinded your passport. It could have been a lot of trouble in the Philippines. So that's why the story goes UFC wanted to cancel this card. I don't know about this, okay? Because as the Filipino gentleman on Bloody Elbow pointed out, I forget the gentleman's name, I'm so sorry. But since Duterte has been elected, they've had rock concerts there. Apparently the WWF has come to town or something like that. Two hotbeds of drug use, and everyone got out there without incident. I talked to someone in the local promoter's office in Manila. Apparently, tickets were not moving for this event. All right, there was just no one lining up to buy a ticket to go see this thing. So if you've got an empty arena, you've got no main event, so it's not a television product anymore. Why are you even doing it? So while the Duterte thing could have been a factor, follow the money, people. There was no money to be made on this card. They were going to take a bath. The money from the live gate. Without BJ Penn, it's not a television property. Follow the money. This is why the event was canceled.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right here, and you're onto something smart, because it always reeked to me that story seemed to be a little bit of a convenient excuse. You're like, oh, well, our staff can't be subjected to this drug testing. The UFC staff's probably drug tested by Zoo for decades beforehand anyhow. So I'm not sure how much I take that, or if I do take that, I take it with the biggest grain
I have
of
no
salt.
idea. I have no doubt, rather, that was what the UFC office told people like Jeremy Botter. I'm sure that's the cover story, but follow the money, people. It's always about money.
Exactly. If there had been a boatload of money to be made, they would have sent the most sober people possible that they know to make this production, make this television production happen.
Palms on the the Philippine government. They would have greased some palms that way. Point is, if there's money to be made on the card, they would have made it. They would have made it happen.
Yes, exactly. I think that 205's probably been beaten to a nice bloody pulp by now by everyone discussing it. Anything about that card stick out to you? I mean, it'll be nice to see my man James Lynch here, NYC side, and
Yeah, you can finally have some good pizza.
yeah, we can show you Canadians how pizza's done proper. Some great stuff.
There is good Canadian pizza out there. I want to make that clear. It's not in any of the big chains. You know, like if you go to Domino's, you go to a Pizza, which is big in Canada, you're gonna get shit. But you go to smaller places, they actually do pizza right. I think James was talking to someone from London, Ontario at that point. Any London, Ontario folks, go to Stobie's. Windsor folk, go to Slices. You know, there is, you know, Toronto's got some good independent pizza places. There is Canadian pizza. You just have to look a little bit harder for it. It's not like New York where most pies are fucking on.
Yeah, I love that. If anything you take away from this podcast, listeners, it's where to get good pizza in Canada. I'm happy we got that out there.
Well, we minimized the drug use talk. You know, though we had a few cocaine mentions. We talked about Mike Perry being an inevitable meth addict or bath salts or something. You know, so we're gonna.
Pizza's the real drug. That's the real killer.
Exactly. And you know, it's something that you can eat after indulging in another quasi-illegal substance. Really illegal in Taiwan. Weed is super illegal here, but you know, in North America, quasi-illegal substance. You know, the two go hand in hand.
Of course. Pizza is the inevitable conclusion of weed.
Yes.
On that note, maybe we should, give our parting shots and say goodbye to these people.
Yeah, what else can we talk? Oh, parting shot. Okay. So, is Anderson Silva versus George St. Pierre going to happen in UFC Toronto? More and more signs are pointing to yes. You know, Dana White keeps throwing cold water on the idea publicly because it came out through Jose Aldo, of all people, that GSP's asking price is a cool $2 million. But like I said before on this show, when they're dicking around Conor McGregor about the end of the Alvarez fight, meet the guy's number, make the money on the pay-per-view. I mean, what is more important to you, control or making a dump truck full of money? For Dana White, I think we know the answer. But for the new UFC ownership under the auspices of Ari Gold, you know, I don't think that's the case. I think Ari Gold's a smart enough businessman to say, hey, listen, when we may lose a couple of million on salary, we're going to make much more times over on the pay-per-view. Dana quit being an idiot. You know, I thought it was interesting that apparently Lorenzo Fertitta is still negotiating with people that Dana White doesn't talk to. It was Lorenzo Fertitta that negotiated Chris Weidman on the UFC 205. Mm-hmm. So he's like the retired Mafia Don. He's like Marlon Brando at the end of Godfather 1. Yeah, he's puttering around in the garden, but everyone still seeks his counsel kind of thing. As Lorenzo moves farther and farther away, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what happens to the people who decide, you know what, Dana's a hothead. I can't talk business with the man. But getting back to the point, GSP and Anderson Silva could happen if they meet GSP's number. It will be a spectacle fight. It's really the only fight I want to see GSP take at this fight. I don't want to see him make another run at 170. He's cleaned up the division twice. He has nothing left to prove. Have him come back if he really, really wants to for a super fight in his home country. You know, one of the biggest dream fights that there ever was. Sure, happening a little bit late. But hey, Chuck Liddell and Vanderlei Silva happened a little late too, and that was fantastic. But they've gone late on a couple of these dream fights, but they still bring in the dollars, they bring in the eyeballs.
Yep, I mean Floyd Mayweather against Manny Pacquiao happened way later than this fight was, and it's going to clean up. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, you know, we're gonna see how WME is going to be as an owner of the UFC, whether they value control over a payday. If this GSP deal happens. I think this Conor deal happening at 205 was a huge indicator that maybe we finally had this shift away from, like, giving up control to just make some money, which ultimately benefits us because we get great, awesome matchups. You're absolutely right. Probably the only fight that makes sense for him is against Anderson Silva. It's a day late, but it definitely won't be $1 short. If not, it's going to be a couple dollars extra. And goddamn it, with the $10 million price tag, you're going to make that money in reinvigorated GSP merchandise. Never mind the fight itself, guys. Let's not dick around on the small dollars and make it happen. And I think Toronto deserves the card. My parting shot for this week is going out to the World Series of Fighting, who have, in their grand genius, counter-programmed UFC 205, maybe the most exciting MMA card put together in human history, with their own slop garbage. Who over there is making the decisions to pick out dates because you, my good friend, deserve to be fired. That is just terrible, terrible planning for an organization that always is struggling for eyeballs. I don't know what card you could put on that could possibly attract a MMA fans' attention for even a second. I can't even envision the MMA media covering this event in any substantial way with an action-packed fight like 205 happening.
Yeah, I think Ray Sefo did address that, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there, but I think he did say that was an NBC Sports decision. But why NBC Sports would want to counter-program something in that vein makes no sense either, so I can't figure it out. World Series of Fighting, I mean, I'm going to get in trouble, but who cares? All right, it's a giant slush. Is what it is. I'm glad certain fighters are getting an opportunity. You know, like I want places for guys to apply their trade, but this has been shady as hell from the get-go. The only one that's made $1 on this has been Ali Abdelaziz because he was the promoter and he was the manager. He still got 20% of like 9 fights on the last WSOF card. You know, and if that's not enough of the conflict of interest, he's got the alleged terror links. You know, the history with Muslims of America. And look out for Mike Russell on RealFightStories.com, his next bit. He's been kind enough to share with me some of the details. I won't reveal them. I'll leave it to Mike. But, you know, there's a reason he's been sitting on this for a long time. He's been connecting a lot of dots, and this is going to end very badly for Ali Abdelaziz, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd fill in some of the color details there by making that my parting shot. All right, you know, that's the end of the show. Thanks for everyone who tuned in live. God damn it, you guys are heroes. You're American champions.
Doing humans work.
Yeah, you are doing the Lord's work. Carlin, say goodbye to the people. Tell them whatever you want to tell them.
Bye. You can find me on the Twitter at Carlin Bardsley. We can talk about face punching. We can talk about beer. I'm in a little bit of a dryout period right now. You can notice the glass of water. You know, it's probably why we didn't get as weird this time out, actually. But we can talk about Bill Murray movies, Asian women, Canadian or U.S. politics, because I do love me a good freak show. And I think that's about it. Oh, yeah, the Reform, Rejuvenate, Reinvigorate, Guns N' Roses, kicking ass all over the world. I was actually going to go buy tickets for GNR because they're playing in Japan during Chinese New Year, which means like I'll have the opportunity anyway. But I found out that buying tickets for a concert in Japan is a very, very complicated process if you're not Japanese. Because you can only buy tickets for Japan if you have like a Japan ID card. Obviously, there are. I know, like I don't understand it either. It's not like if I want to go see, like if I'm in Canada, I want to go see a ticket or a concert in New York. Well, just buy it on Ticketmaster, and boom, I have a credit card, and everyone's happy, right? So, but it doesn't work that way in Japan apparently, and so now I don't know what I'm gonna do. But there are like Japanese like agencies and like resellers, but of course the markup on there is unreal. If there's anyone out there who can hook me up with Japanese tickets, for a reasonable price, holla at boy. I want to see Axel Slash and Duff back together again. I don't ask for much, and believe me, I get even less out of this life. Okay, so holler at your boy at Carlin Bardsley. I will see them while I still am avoided being kicked out of Southeast Asia. Did I tell you that story?
No, not at all.
Okay, very quickly. Got screwed over by a shady employer here in Taiwan. They still haven't paid me for the time I was there yet, but they fucked with my work permit. So basically, I was in a right overstayed my visa, and that I was getting a grab bag of opinions for anywhere from that doesn't matter, just just go out and come back, dude, you're fucked. So I visited immigration twice. Both times I had been told, no, we don't want you here, dirty foreigner. Oh, why go ren? That's their term for foreigner. So I was there literally on the last day that I could have been there without being like completely kicked out of the country. I'm sitting there. I've got my bag in front of me, and I'm just kind of rocking back and forth because I have no idea like how this is going to play out, right? And the lady helping me was actually very helpful. I finally found someone with their head on straight in the Taiwanese immigration office. She's like, why do you have bag? And I say, well, if I lose, I leave. Like, I would have had to go right to the court at that point, eh? And she goes, no. You cute like baby. You stay. You pay fine. Okay. And I'm like, I'm like, well, are these? I was told these forms aren't okay because they're not the original copies. She goes, look, bonk, stamp. Okay, you pay money, you go now. I'm like, that was it. After all this, fuck. I'm like, all right, I pay a little fine, and I get a stamp, and I get told that I'm cute like baby. So
babyface Bardsley walks away scot-free because he's a babyface, looking all dapper.
Yeah, the laws are very flimsy if you are cute like baby.
Always be cute like baby, guys. Yes. That's the moral of the story.
That's the next parting shot T-shirt. You know?
Definitely, I'll give that one for free. All right, you can. I'm not James Lynch if you haven't figured this out yet, Canada and U.S. and on the global viewership of the Parting Shot. I'm Andrew Lawrence. You can find me on Twitter at the Clown Kid. Talk to me about whatever. I'll get into a dumb argument at the drop of a hat. James Lynch is away. yes, you have witnessed that. James Lynch is away in New Orleans. We will give him the NO salute. Happy travels and enjoy. The Big Easy. Is that is that New Orleans?
Yeah.
Is New Orleans Big Easy? Okay, good.
Big Easy, sleazy, whatever.
Whatever. All right. My party. Oh, did I? No, we did that. Did I do a party shot? Thank you.
Yeah, yours was WSOF, right?
Oh, I guess that's all that's left.
That's what got me on my Ali rant. You know what's even funnier about Ali Abdelaziz is apparently, he hates James Lynch, the passion, I'm told, but think I'm an okay guy. I'm pretty sure he's mixed up the two of us.
He has no clue who the two of you are, because of course James Lynch is the nice guy and you're the asshole.
Exactly, and I'm the guy who's friends with Mike Russell. I'm the guy that has been following this whole thing, and think that Ali pulled scumbag move after scumbag move after scumbag move. James Lynch, while he doesn't disagree, is a lot more politically correct than I am. But yeah,
and he gives a showcase to all these WSOF fighters in a major way that they don't.
Ali can't tell Canadians apart, apparently.
It's tough, man. It's a tough one. All you Canucks are just so goddamn polite.
Yeah.
Okay, man. All right. All that's left to say then, I guess, is keep your hands up because you don't want to get knocked out. Peace, guys.
James, he's a little bit more authority than that, but yes, and be cute like baby.
And be cute like baby. Peace, guys.